This evening we'll be looking at differentiation. Just give me 1 second. So differentiation and meeting every learner's needs. You may have come across what differentiation is in the classroom before, but Heather and I are going to go through it in a little bit more detail with you this evening. I have put the link to the Sophia number into the chat if you need to scroll back up to see that. However, it will be on a slide in a moment. So, as always, you'll receive a certificate of participation and the webinar handout in the next couple of days. If you don't receive it, please email MLA at formazione@mlaworld.com. The webinar contains useful information, important links, and worksheets that are shown in this webinar for you to use in your classrooms subsequently. As I mentioned, the Sophia code for this webinar is in the chat. It is on the screen now. So I don't know if you want to take a quick photo, maybe, so you don't lose it. So I'll leave that on the screen for a couple more moments. Okay. So what do we mean by differentiation? So differentiation, sorry, is being aware and attending to the differences of our students in the classroom. And that could be difference in their learning, that may be difference in their levels when we're talking about EFL, and not pretending that every learner learns in the same way, by completing the same activities, by doing the same thing in the classroom. It's good to have a variety and allowing the learner to learn in the best way for them. Okay, so that may be adjusting our input, the process, the output of the students, and the type of support that we offer. So it is just tweaking intentionally your lesson plans to adhere to those different things that learners may have in your classes. Sorry. What differentiation is not is doing different lesson plans for each individual student in the class. Okay, we can't physically do that. I don't think any of us have enough time to be able to do that. And also that's not the point. We need the students to be able to work together. And differentiation needs to be subtle. Okay, so it's not always grouping the stronger students together and the maybe not so strong students together. It's about having different kinds of activities in the classroom for the students to do in mixed groups or in maybe more level appropriate groups. And differentiation is not only for SEN learners or learners in EAL. We can do differentiation in all subjects really, but obviously we'll be concerned in relation to learning English in today's webinar, but it can be extended and should be extended really in learning in general.
Can I add something on this last slide, Luke? So when we say that it's not only for learners with labels, we also mean that when you differentiate for your special educational needs students or for your English as an additional language or all of the different neurodivergencies, when you differentiate for these, you will teach the higher levels, you will teach the lower levels, and by default, you'll be able to teach everyone in the middle.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. So a lot of you have already put in the chat where you're from and who you are, but let us know if you're somewhere else. Most of our participants are in Italy at the moment, but if you're in the UK, if you're elsewhere in the world, please let us know. Give us a little bit of information as well, the typical age range that you teach, the level of your learners, and a differentiation challenge that you face quite consistently or commonly throughout the academic year. So hopefully today we'll give you lots and lots of information. And by the end of the session, you'll be able to describe what differentiation is and what it is not in an EFL context. Explore the four levers in British English or levers in American English, which Heather will be speaking to you in. Um, so the four levers of differentiation, so input, process, output, and learning environment. See practical tech-based strategies for mixed level groups. So Heather will be talking about different technologies and how technology has advanced that helps us in the classroom with differentiation. Um, how we'd be able to focus on inclusion for SEN learners. So Heather just mentioned about students with neurodivergencies and how we can accommodate these in the classroom with students who don't have any extra educational needs. And hopefully you'll be able to take away at least one differentiated task that we give you, which you'll be able to use maybe next week if you're still in school, but if not, in the new year for sure. So over to Heather.
Okay, so I was just going through the chat and I can see that we have primary teachers and secondary teachers. We have people who have special needs students and a lot of neurodivergent kids, and that's awesome. So there are four dimensions of differentiation. A simple way to think about it is what can I adjust? What can I change to help differentiate my class to make my class more inclusive? So when we talk about it, we talk about four main things. First thing is um, the input the kids are getting in class. And this can be done, I'm going to talk about these things in more detail later, by tiering content, leveling the content, providing a variety of materials. For example, if you're teaching descriptive writing, for example, they don't all have to be describing the same thing. Presentation styles, so some kids can get videos, some can get presentations, some can get audios, different presentation styles. Scaffolding, which is giving them extra support like graphic organizers and things like that. Learning contracts, these are for kids who are more advanced and you don't want them to be bored in class. So you give them learning contracts. We'll talk about that. And compacting, which is also for higher level students. Then we have the process, and the process is divided into tiered activities, learning centers, graphic organizers, jigsaw activities. Jigsaw activities, we'll talk about that in more detail, and manipulatives. Outputs is allowing them to show their learning or to output in many different ways where they can showcase that they've learned the same objective, but in the way that is more comfortable for them. Someone can be recording a voice note, someone can make a slideshow. When I used to teach Macbeth, for example, at the beginning of each act, I'd divide the kids into different groups based on what they want, and they would have to read the act, and then they would summarize it either into a comic strip doing drawings, or they would summarize it into a modern version where they'd act it out, or they could summarize it by turning it into a song with a like a rap song with a tune and everything. And this is one way of differentiating the product or the output. The third thing is the learning environment, allowing kids movement. When we were kids, I'm nearly 50, but when I was a kid, we all had to sit in class, sit straight, look at the teacher, not move. This did not turn out to be the best way. So allowing movement, allowing kids to stand. Some kids work better when they're standing, some when they're sitting, doing fluid grouping or flexible grouping, letting some kids during working time use noise canceling headphones to let them focus more, and having routine in class. It also depends on the student's readiness, their interests, and their learning profile.
Perfect. And just adding on to that, Heather, I think as well, it's super important, like the output. So differentiation is important for us to know as teachers, but then also giving the students the option as well, how they like I said, how like Heather said, sorry, show their understanding, how they produce the language. So it could be in terms of writing, it could be in terms of speaking, and then the various forms of speaking and writing, singing, and maybe recording a short little podcast. But it's super important that we give the students the options to differentiate how they produce the language, and it's not just a one-way street where the teacher is differentiating between the students. It's good for the students to be able to pick their mode of production as well.
I'd like
Next
to
slide.
answer
Oh.
Katerina from the chat. She says
Mhm.
a problem she personally faces sometimes is the evaluation part. I differentiate students when talking about marks, but some feel that this is unfair. What we're trying to do generally is move away from how important marks are. So in the last few generations, everyone was very focused on marks. What we do now is we talk to students and we talk to parents about not measuring the marks or the grades based on the rest of the class, but looking from the beginning of the semester or the beginning of the year to the end of the semester or the end of the year and measuring that growth. And
Yeah.
the more we shift the parents and the students, what's the word I'm looking for? The more we shift
Perspective. It's
their
more about, I
perspective.
guess, like individual progress rather than relative marks to the rest of the class, right?
Exactly. And that is a conversation we just have to have like over and over again with the students and the parents. Okay, so tech as an ally. So technology is not magic, but it's a powerful ally if we use it purposefully. Digital tools let learners control the pace. They can pause or replay audio, change speed, reread slides. We offer them different tasks or formats. So for example, I'll talk about this in the next slide. I'll talk about the differentiating using tech in the next slide, the input. It makes invisible needs visible. So before lessons, you can put out a quick Google form or a quick poll or a quick online quiz just to find out where your learners are. It can be a task that wouldn't take them more than a couple of minutes the day before the lesson, and it would give you things like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms. They give you an overview of everyone by using graphs and bar charts and things. Super easy for free. It gives you extra challenge or support discreetly. So a long time ago when we had dyslexic students and we were working just by pen and paper or by like notebooks and stuff, when we print a paper for a dyslexic student, we'd print it on the really big paper with the big font, and this was very embarrassing. Now they can use their computers and zoom in more, and this is more discreet. Save and reuse differentiated tasks. Yep, and I talked about that other part.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's first look at reading and listening. So using platforms that have playback control. I think most of us during COVID had to teach online. For me personally, it was scary. It was difficult to learn because I'm older. But once I got the hang of it and once I started using it, I found that it was amazing for differentiating with kids. So there are platforms that you can use like Edpuzzle, Google Classroom, Moodle, using YouTube videos where the kids can have subtitles. They can have they can decide on the speed. They can pause and play it again, and that's really, really helpful. I said subtitles, captions, share transcripts if possible, offer two versions of the same text. This is the thing I was going to talk about in the last slide. So if you are an English teacher and you're teaching a text, we have students with different levels within the same class because usually our classes in mainstream schools are divided by age, not by level, right? So you would have in a one classroom kids that are different Lexile levels. Just to clarify, in case somebody doesn't know what Lexile levels is, Lexile level is their reading level. It measures their vocabulary and their understanding. What you can do is you can go onto websites like News ELA. This is a free website, and you can pick the same text and have it differentiate it for you, give it to you in 4 different versions. It has the same content, the questions have the same objectives, the tasks have the same objectives. It's just differentiated into different levels. If you don't want to use these texts and you have your own texts, AI can be a very powerful tool. Running your text through AI asking it not just for differentiated text, but also for differentiated questions or differentiated tasks that have the same objective. So it's important when you're putting in the prompt of a text, for example, telling AI differentiate this text by lexile levels. I would usually go 200 lexile over and 200 lexile under, for example, and also ask it to differentiate the tasks and the questions. But you can also ask it to stick to the same objective. For example, if your objective is finding the main idea in a text or analyzing characters, it can differentiate for you. And this is a very powerful tool. What else? Using reading modes or immersive readers for dyslexia. Personally, I use something called Speechify. I have ADHD. Maybe you can notice because I'm talking very fast. I'll try to slow down. So it is so much easier for me. I have an add-on to all my browsers. It's called Speechify, and it reads for me the text. And it reads it for me depending on the speed that I need. I can have it slower, I can have it faster, I can pause it and start it. It is extremely, extremely helpful. Open Dyslexic Font is a free font that you can get online, and you can, there's an image of it here of how it looks like. Each of the letters are weighted from the bottom, so they're a bit thicker from the bottom, and this really helps readers with dyslexia. Chrome, Microsoft, Google extensions. You can also have add-ons that would change the background for the students. If you don't use technology in class, you can have a plastic layout. It's like a transparent plastic sheet that they put over whatever they're reading, and the color helps dyslexic students very much. Also, there are dyslexic rulers that are the same thing. They're transparent colors, and the kids can pick between colors, whichever is more is easier for them. And then it really helps them to read.
Yeah, just adding on to that, Heather. I think like the text to speech immersive readers are really good. I mean, I use them for when I'm still learning other languages, and I generally think that like I'm better at reading, like, or students are generally better at reading than they are at listening. So I like to follow like what I'm reading and then being able to hear it at the same time. I think is really good when we're learning languages, English or whatever language it may be. And I think as well, like YouTube, obviously as long as we have appropriate material, is really good because it has like closed captions. You can have the captions in a different language. You can like speed the video up. You can slow it down. It has live transcripts as well now. So I think with technology and even just kind of like video sharing platforms, they're becoming more and more um, inclusive in themselves being able to be used like in the classroom. Like back in the day when YouTube was created, it was probably just a video sharing platform for sharing videos of cats or something. But now we can use it in the classroom um, for many, many activities. So it's yeah, the way that technology is kind of advancing with regards to being able to use it in the classroom in all of these different ways is pretty exciting and pretty fascinating at the same time. So moving on to the next slide.
Okay, so digital language lifelines or vocabulary support. Somebody in the chat had said that they find it difficult to get their students interested in vocabulary and
Mhm.
using these online games because this generation is a generation that loves technology. They love everything that is gamified. So putting using the vocabulary cards in the sites I'm going to mention right now, turns it into a game, and this way they find it really interesting. So you could create a shared word bank slide or digital boards for each unit. If any of you guys have used Padlet, Padlet is a free site, and it's colorful, and you can choose the background, and you can make it interactive, and they can like each other's stuff, and they can comment, and so it's very familiar for this generation. I've used it a lot for vocabulary and for things like sentence starters and the kids find it they like it. They like it. So there's Padlet. There's using clickable word cards with translation and definition on Quizlet and WordWall. Something like Quizlet already has thousands of uploaded videos or uploaded word cards or like series of things that you can use, or you can create your own. Another great free resource or WordWall. You can ask students to build a class glossary in a shared document on Google Slides or Padlet, or there's another thing called Wakelet. Wakelet is a bit difficult for beginner students or for younger students. Padlet is the one I found that the younger students like the most. Google Slides or shared documents for the older kids. Provide personal word lists or sentence starters for special education need learners on Google Notes or OneNote. I found that providing the sentence starters or the word lists for everybody helps. I mean, if they don't want to use it, they won't use it. If they need it, they'll refer back to it. But I think it always helps.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Heather, as well. And like Quizlet is great. Like I quite like using Quizlet. It's free to sign up for, so you don't have to pay. There is a paid tier, but you don't have to. And Quizlet's really good because it has lots of different types of games. You can have kind of like flashcards or like polls, and then when the students get a correct answer, it will be like a race to the end, and then the students get really competitive, so they want to be first. So yeah, I really enjoy using Quizlet, and like you said, like Google Slides, Google Docs, PowerPoint, what we're using for this presentation, things like this are all good. Shameless plug, but MLA has got a YouTube channel, and we did do a webinar on gamification. It was myself and my colleague Ruth. So if you're interested in kind of looking at how to gamify your classroom a little bit more, just go to MLA World on YouTube and find the relevant video. And yeah, we give you some tips and tricks on how to gamify certain aspects of the classroom, and there are many more videos as well from the academic team here at MLA. But anyway, moving forward. So differentiating the process. So classroom stations. So I'm just gonna. Oh. Sorry, a bit premature. So classroom stations. So this is where we organize the classroom in a way, maybe with tables, um, where the students are doing kind of different things at different times, but are still working to the same kind of objective, right? So they could be, as it says on the screen, they could be working on the life cycle of different animals, but they'll be doing maybe different animals or maybe different aspects of the animal. So like when the animal is a child, when it's matured, things like this, what it eats, where it stays. So this is about like having, sorry.
Yep. No, go on. When you're done with that.
So with classroom station, sorry, it's about having the students the opportunity to do different things in the classroom, working towards the same goal. So the in the middle of the screen, you should be able to see where it says blue, green, and orange. So all of these are reading tasks, right? We read for gists, we can read for detail, or we can read to infer opinion. So these are all reading tasks, but the stations in the classroom will be set up for the students to be doing different types of reading activity within the broader goal of reading, right? So we can get the students to do this in the classroom, like at multiple times. So groups have 5 minutes for the blue station. Then after 5 minutes, they go to the green station, and then they rotate. So they're practicing different skills within the same broader skill. And coming up with different productions. So if we're looking at questions, as you can see, the blue station would have simple multiple choice questions. The green would be looking at WH or how questions. And then orange could maybe be looking at challenging questions. Um, and this is good, as Heather mentioned earlier, for a number of reasons. So we can group the students by their ability in this way, and then it's not obvious that the students are grouped by ability in this way because every group goes to a station. So it's not like there's one station which is difficult and one station which is easy. Um, every group goes to that particular station. We can do it as mixed groups, mixed abilities, okay? Because again, it's not obvious that there's a more difficult station compared to another station, and the students are practicing different aspects of a skill, right? So reading for gist may come more easily for one student, but maybe slightly more challenging for another, where that student is better at reading for detail. So then the students can then kind of assist and help each other with their learning, whilst they're on different stations, completing different tasks. And also as well, this works with like fluid grouping. Okay, so you can mix the groups up at the end of every station, obviously ensuring the student doesn't return to the same station, but you can change the groups up and mix them up in that way as well. Heather, you were going to jump in?
Yes, I would like to add two things. First thing I would like to add about the fluid grouping, because we did explain it in a previous webinar, but I don't
Mhm.
think we did in this one. So the fluid grouping is getting to know your students, and then creating different types of groups and naming them different things. So for example, we could have the Harry Potter groups where there'd be like Gryffindor and Hufflepuff, and you know, as a teacher, the kids in these groups are all same levels. So if you have a task where you want them to be doing the same levels, you will tell them get into your Harry Potter house groups. And then you could have another group that is, for example, another type of grouping that is, for example, soccer teams. And you tell them, okay, get into your soccer team groups now. And this, you would know that these are the mixed level groups, for example. Um, how old are your students? I've used this for students from third grade all the way up to 10th grade. Okay. Another type of grouping is you could group them based on interests. And for example, let's take what it says here on the slides if they're working on the same objective but a different topic. Let's say we're teaching descriptive writing, and we have a bunch of kids that we know are very interested in soccer, a bunch of kids who are very interested in digital stuff like videos, like anything online. We have another group who are interested in pop stars, and we're doing descriptive writing. We don't do like we used to do many years ago, where we put up, for example, a nature scene or a picture of a haunted house and say, everybody describe it, because you'll lose kids' interest or engagement. What you
Mhm.
do is you'd have one of this type of fluid grouping would be kids who you know them, you know their interests, and you divide the stations based on their interests. So you could print a picture of Mo Salah, for example, playing and running and the crowd cheering, and then have them do the objective for that descriptive writing on that image. Another group would be doing it about a pop star, for example. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
The other thing was that the reason why we do this fluid grouping is because when we only do grouping based on levels, a lot of bullying happens, and kids know that, oh, you're putting me with all the weak students, and it's not pretty. So, but when you have many different types of groups that you would have, and only you would know, and you keep during the lesson telling them, okay, everybody get into your colors groups. And then for the next task, I want everybody to get into their Harry Potter house groups. Like I said, they kind of are unable to keep track about which group is because of what. Am I making sense?
Mhm. Yeah, clear, loud and clear. Apart from when you said soccer, you obviously meant football. But we're going to right. We're going to just watch a little bit of this video. It's 5 minutes long, but we don't have a huge amount of time, so we're just going to play it for maybe a couple of minutes. And it's on about station rotation in the classroom. Okay.
Great volunteers. Go ahead. Yes, nice job. So, this section of our curriculum, we have been looking at nonfiction texts. When we're looking at our book today, we're going to be thinking about where we can get information. And then in the phonics realm, we focused on contractions. We're taking two words, and what are we sticking them together with?
Apostrophe.
Yes, Karen. And then we break off into our small groups. So our yellow group is still learning how to do a lot of our literacy things. The green group is doing pretty well, but has a few things to work on still. And our blue group is hitting all the first grade standards and needs to be stretched. So our differentiation kind of takes two forms. The first is by student grouping, and the second is by modality of learning. We have 20 minutes per station, and there are 3 of the stations. The students will rotate through all 3 stations each day.
So our first station for the blue group is the computer station.
The students use a Google form to check in. They'll normally watch a video or carefully observe a photograph and answer some questions about that.
We watched a video about how to grow a seed. We had to type in our favorite part and why.
After they finish that form, they can check out an ebook.
And then you could do this game of reading called Teacher Must Know How to Read.
We're delivering things in a way that is visual, that is auditory, that is individual to the students through the technology.
After that, she rings the bell.
Clean up, switch up, first grade readers.
We switch to the sort station.
Our sort station is more of a physical modality. They're using their bodies, which is so important for first graders. They need to move. Kids are cutting out the words. They're gluing them down.
We had a contraction game. It's fun because it's all mixed up and you had to find the right pieces. And then after we do that, we do rainbow writing.
That's another way that we do.
Okay, so I didn't want to play all of it, but the link to it will be in the handout that I mentioned at the beginning. But hopefully you'll be able to see that even with the students in the video whose first language is English, still able to use differentiation and different stations in the classroom for them to focus on different things, right? So the second station that they just moved to is more physical. They're cutting things out and they're stood up. So good for kind of kinesthetic learners. Whereas the first station that we saw, they were kind of audiovisual. So they were watching something on the computer, listening to it, and then filling in a form. So we can incorporate these into EFL learning themselves as well. So that just gave you a bit more of an idea if you were struggling to kind of follow what Heather and myself were saying. So hopefully that video helped. Next slide. Okay. So this follows on quite nicely. So differentiating the process, how they, being the students, work. So right at the beginning, I kind of said that the output is important for the students and giving them the option, giving them the option to kind of produce the language specifically when we're talking about English in a way that feels comfortable for them, but then also in a way that pushes them as well. We don't want them to be so comfortable that they're not coming out of their comfort zone, but in a way that they can express themselves, right? So, I mean, we've got a couple of ideas on the slide now. So for mixed level classes, we can give them maybe 2 routes or 2 forks. If you want it to be a little bit more structured, you would give the groups like sentence starters. Okay, it's a more of a controlled exercise because you are giving them the information that you would like them to use, and then they can build from that. And like Heather said earlier, even if it's a relatively strong class, sometimes it is good to give them the information, and so they get used to using this information in this specific context, right? So it's important for stronger learners as well as perhaps not so strong. Or another route could be more independent kind of learning. So again, if you're doing a kind of a speaking exercise, rather than giving the stronger or more independent-minded students some sentence starters, get them to think about their own questions. What can they think about themselves? So as you can see, we've got two different ways for the students to respond in a more controlled way. One is slightly more free, but we're still the students are still practicing their spoken word in this example. This works really well with online lessons as well. If some of you do teach online, you can give the option for the students to respond verbally in the main lobby as you ask the questions, or you can ask them to respond in the chat. Okay, if they're more comfortable writing their answers down, or maybe they're a bit anxious to be speaking in front of the whole class on a Zoom call, giving them the option to respond in the chat online or by shouting out their answers is a good way to differentiate online teaching as well. Flexible grouping, as we've mentioned already, so we compare similar level students to work on things like confidence, okay? And then mixed level groups more for like projects and activities, which are maybe a little bit more, not necessarily more dynamic, but take slightly longer, I would argue, than perhaps maybe some speaking or reading exercises, which you're looking for greater confidence, maybe greater fluency. And then as an example of what I spoke about on the previous slide, so stationing. So you can use stations A, B, and C in this example to differentiate what the students are doing in the classroom at a particular moment. Okay, so you've got station A looking at vocabulary. Station B is running a speaking exercise. And then station B is looking at extension. So perhaps you can link, well, they should be all linked together using the vocabulary that they learned in station A in their speaking exercise on station B, and then looking at how they can extend that at station C. So good tools to use for stationing online, breakout rooms on Zoom, shared station slides. You can project individual slides and digital timers. So a countdown, having a clock countdown in the breakout room if you are online. So the students are aware how much time they've got left in the breakout room. Okay, moving on to the next slide.
Okay, so differentiating output, choice boards. Choice boards is something, again, I've used in primary school and in secondary school. It looks different. So this one that I have here, I've used for kids who are in grade, I don't know, in Italy, do you call them year or grade, but we'd use them in grade 6 and 7. And for the bigger kids, what we do is we would let them choose whatever they're more comfortable with. I used to have a student who, if you give him a task in 7th grade where he has to write, it's very stressful for him, very difficult for him, and he would end up not giving me output. But then by coincidence, we were doing TED Talks and he had to stand and talk in front of the class. And he had everyone spellbound. He had everyone mesmerized, and he was so good at expressing himself standing in front of the class. And so for several other tasks, I would let him record TED Talks where he would send them to me, email them to me, or upload them onto the LMS. The only thing I would say about this is that try to push your students sometimes outside of their comfort zone. So we want them to learn. We don't want to force them to write. Of course, that's a skill that they have to learn, but sometimes we have to let them showcase their learning without actually writing. But I would say, like, if you have a student who prefers to do PowerPoints instead of writing texts, then I would say every sometime, if the task is easy, push them out of their comfort zone and have them do the writing part. Have them try something different. Write a paragraph, audio message, computers. Students with dyslexia, ADHD, and some students who are on the spectrum, I have found that working with them, when you allow them, especially if they're going to write essays, to type instead of handwrite, it takes away, for a lot of students, the drawing of the letters is very stressful, and it takes a lot of their cognition. It takes a lot of their a lot of mental effort to focus on just the drawings of the letters, to focus on staying at the lines. So let's say if the task, for example, is writing an opinion paragraph, they would be too focused on the handwriting and on the drawing of the letters to actually showcase what they can do. And if you allow them to type, what you can do is you can cancel the spell check, for example, or the autocorrect on their computers and let them type out. Then the flow of ideas is more, and you will see that they've learned, you will see that they can write an opinion paragraph, they know the persuasive writing, and then you can teach them the handwriting skill separately. Yep.
Cool. Perfect.
Okay, so which one's this? Built-in accessibility. Use clear fonts and high contrast. I think I talked about that before. The image here has those colored things for dyslexia that I talked about before that you can put on a screen. So they can be attached to the student's screen to the computer, or they can be put on a book or a paper. Allow colored backgrounds, offer speech to text or text to speech, especially with dyslexic students who struggle with reading. If you allow them to put maybe one AirPod or just one what's it called? Earphone? Like they just put one thing in one ear and they can hear you with the other ear. And then if it's difficult for them to read the text, they can use the speech to text, or they can use text to speech. Give multi-channel instructions. So when you're giving instructions, we'd usually say it, but also write it on the board for students who are visual and who cannot grasp the instructions just by hearing them. Which is the clearest font? It depends on the learners. Some learners prefer the Comic Sans, some prefer the open dyslexia one, but the open dyslexia one is difficult for the for students who don't have dyslexia. So I wouldn't use that as a whole class thing. I found with my students that they were most comfortable with the Comic Sans. Personally, I am most comfortable with Times New Roman. So I think it differs. Someone in the chat is saying Arial. A lot of people are more comfortable with Arial. That's very true. What else? Quiet universal design helps everyone, not only SEN learners. So UDL is something that if you teach in an IB school or IB system, it's very interesting. I've attached in the handout a web page and a video that actually explain what UDL is. We don't have time to go into that today, but it's very interesting and it really helps with planning lessons.
Perfect. Okay, to conclude then, we've got a short checklist. So when planning and your differentiation in your classes subsequently, think about which lever you're going to use. Was it you're going to differentiate the input, the process, the output, or maybe the learning environment? I think it's important to focus on one of these to differentiate, because if you try and do too much all at once, it might get a little bit messy. So especially if you've not been used to differentiating too much previously, just like stick with one, and then as you get confident and maybe more experience, you can start differentiating more of the processes. But at the beginning, I would just do one because it could get a little bit messy, a little bit hectic. Using the right kind of tech for the class that you're the lesson that you're delivering. Okay, I think technology is obviously super important, and Heber has gone through some very good tech solutions to some of the issues, but tech is there to assist. It shouldn't just be used just because it's there, right? Like sometimes it's worse to kind of just use tech for tech's sake. How does it add value to the lesson that you're doing? I mean, a lot of the tech that we've mentioned does add value kind of intrinsically, but I mean, you need to really think about what kind of technologies to use and how will it improve the lesson? How will it differentiate better, more clearly? than perhaps another form of technology, right? Why is text to speech better than me feeding this through an AI and an AI differentiating? So like you need to kind of decide between the text as as well as using the technology. Where can you give the learners a real choice? Okay, like Heber mentioned, it could be either in the process, it could be in the output. Um, and we do need to give the learners the choice in a way to make it needs to be a nice balance, right? We need the learners to be able to respond in a way that makes them feel most comfortable, in a way that they can express themselves most coherently. But also, we do need to push them as well. We do need to get them out of their comfort zone and to perhaps develop speaking if we know they're really good at writing. Okay, so we do need to give learners a choice. It is a balance to strike in this regard. And then how to check who needs what before the next lesson. So like as Heather mentioned, you can do some polls, you can do Google Forms or Microsoft Forms prior to the lesson. So then students can respond and you're aware with who needs what, who would prefer to do what, and you can then plan, adjust, tweak your lessons accordingly. As ever, we're welcome to your suggestions for future webinars. We have loads planned for the new year, but obviously your ideas are welcome as well. So either pop them into a chat or send us an email. So thank you for your attendance. We have run slightly over, but thank you for persevering. As I mentioned at the beginning, you will receive a certificate of participation. If you don't, contact MLA at formazione@mlaworld.com. The next webinar is January the 8th, Winter in the English Classroom, and I will be doing that with my colleague Josh. So that's it for 2025. Thank you for attending. If you've been to many, if this is your first one, see you in the new year. Merry Christmas, Buon Natale, Feliz Navidad. Any more?
I don't know any. Merry
Yeah.
Christmas, everybody, and thank you for bearing with us.
But thank you very much, and we'll see everybody in 2026. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.